Hello, welcome to episode 80 of Knits and Stuff. My name is Alicia, and today we'll be talking about finished objects, works in progress, pretty things, and local delights. But first, welcome to those of you that are new, and for those of you that are returning, thanks for coming back. If you haven't already, there's a group on Ravelry that you can join. The group's called Knits and Stuff Podcast, and there's a link in the show notes, which are at knitsandstuffpodcast.com. So yeah, let's get started. It's been a little while since I last podcasted, a couple months, and so I have some finished objects to show, and the first one is what I'm wearing. So this is The Weekender by ANDREA MOWRY. It's out of Madeline Tosh DK Twist in the colorway El Greco. It's from a sweater club that I was part of a few years ago. And I knit this down one size needle on US 6, 7s, and 8s, 4.0, 4.5, and 5.0 millimeter needles on my Likey interchangeable needles. And I made a few modifications. I think I knit, well, let me stand up a little bit, you can kind of see. Oh yeah, okay. And then I definitely knit the sleeves longer. I think I picked up the stitches along the armhole. I ended up with a little bit more than what the pattern had called for the size I was making. So by the time I decreased down to my size, I was basically at the length that I needed, but I knit a little bit longer because I do like the longer sleeves to kind of cover up my hands. But yeah, and then I tried two different bind offs on the top. One was the one that was in the pattern, and then the other one was like a bind off where you don't have to cut the working yarn to bind off, but you still do that like Kitchener stitch style bind off. But that's linked to in my project page on Ravelry. And yeah, I think that was mostly it. I did alternate skeins because it's Madeline Tosh, and they have the skeins can alter a little bit in color from skein to skein. So to keep that that like separation of color from happening through the sweater, I did alternate skeins, and actually you can see a little bit of a seam, well, you can see a lot a lot of a seam where I did alternate the skeins, but I don't think it's that bad. I guess there's no seam on this side, but it doesn't look terrible necessarily. It's just not symmetrical. So yeah, I think I did not do helical knitting, but I hear a lot about how that's a way to prevent that like jog line or a seam like this in your knitting. I'm not sure how it would work on the Weekender when there's like this slip stitch pattern down the middle, because eventually you're kind of moving your stitches over in a way, or like the beginning of your row over. So yeah, I don't know. I think if I knit this again, I would try to do helical knitting to avoid that, if I had to alternate skeins. But oh, and then I did not alternate skeins on the arms until I got to the color or the skein change. And then I alternated for a few rows and then continued to the next color. But I don't think I don't think it's too obvious. Yeah, it still looks I can't see it in person where I started changing skeins. So yeah, but that's a finished sweater, and yeah, I'm really excited. I'm glad it turned out okay, and it fits. It's been washed and blocked, so it drapes really nicely, and it's quite warm. So I finished it just in time for the cool season now that it's cooling down over here in the Bay Area. So yeah, it's a finished sweater. So next finished object I have are the Mohair Bed Socks. These are inspired by Amy Florence from Stranded Dye Works. She also has a podcast, and they are just toe-up socks that were knit with fingering weight sock yarn, held together with mohair. And so it's out of mohair silk and BFL nylon fingering in the colorway Patisserie, also from Stranded Dye Works. And I knit these on US 1.5s, 2.5mm needles, so they size up from my normal sock knitting size. And then yeah, so I knit these toe up. I accidentally cast on more stitches on one of the socks on the toes than the other, but that's fine. I just knit a little bit longer to get that length that I needed for the toes. And then I did the toe-up socks with a different heel, gusset and heel from that pattern. So there is a gusset and a heel flap. Yeah, and then I just did a 1x1 ribbing at the top, and I bound off with Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, and I cast on with Judy's Magic Cast On. So yeah, I'm very excited about these. They're very cozy, and I cannot wait to wear them now that it's really cold at our house. Yeah, so those are some finished socks. So I have another pair of finished socks. These are Handspun Socks. They're out of Pigeon Nerd Studio Superwash Merino Nylon that I spun up a few years ago. It's roughly fingering weight yarn, and but since it's hand spun, you can see that it's not an identical pair of socks, but they do still match, and I really like these a lot. I have knit a few projects with my handspun, but not too many, and this is the first pair of socks that I've knit out of handspun, and I really want to make more now. But yeah, so these are also toe up, knit on US 1s, 2.25mm needles. I knit them on my signature double points, and I use a Fish Lips Kiss heel on the bottom, and then just did a 2x2 rib at the top, and then again using Judy's Magic Cast On and Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. And yeah, these are ready to wear now that I've shown them off on the podcast and can put some use into them. So I'm excited about these. Another finished object that I have is the Hobbit Bofur scarf that I made from the Stansborough Fibers kit that we got in the UK. So this is out of 3 different colors of Stansborough Fibers Mithril in Takahe, Kakako, and Raupo. And the pattern did come with the kit, so it's supposed to match one of the characters' scarves in the movie The Hobbit. This has not been washed and blocked yet, so it's going to stretch out a little bit based off of their instructions. But yeah, this was a very quick knit because it was on US 15 needles, 10.0 millimeters, very large. But yeah, it was very fast, and it's a surprisingly long scarf for how long it took to knit. So yeah, so this is a scarf ready to go if I ever need to cosplay as Bofur too. I have it ready. So next finished object we have is the Sockhead hat, Sockhead Slouch Hat, but I actually made this out of worsted yarn. So this is, if you've seen the podcast before, a few episodes back I talked about, actually I think, oh no, it would have been like a year ago. I don't know if I talked about the hats that I made out of We Are Knitters, the baby alpaca, but I made some gift hats out of those, and I also got a skein for myself in this spotted mauve mauve, spotted mauve color. It's like it's a pretty mauve-ish. And instead of knitting the same hat that I made for the gifts, because it looked a little weird on me, that was my initial plan, was to make this pattern from We Are Knitters that was kind of like a turban style hat. It looks kind of weird on my head. So I was like, oh, well, what if I do something kind of like a slouchy sockhead hat? And so I just adopted the pattern to the worsted weight yarn. And to do that, I knit it on US 6 for the ribbing and 4.0 millimeters, and then US 8 for the stockinette stitch 5.0 millimeter needles. And I cast on 104 stitches based off of searching through other people's projects, and then also based off of hats in the past that I have knit out of worsted weight yarn. Yeah, and then it actually fits really well, which I should have not put my hair up today, and then I could be wearing it to show it off. But no, I really like it. It's a nice cozy hat, and now this makes my third sockhead hat. Yeah, I think. But they're very versatile and nice and warm, so I'm glad to have this to add to my collection. Last finished object I have is another project that is new since the last time I podcast. So a little backstory, on Instagram I follow Spun Right Round, and they had posted a picture of a mini skein set that was called Cauldron, and I really liked it and bought it almost immediately after I saw it. And then after that I tried to figure out what am I going to make with this mini skein set. It was 10 skeins of yarn, about 80 yards each, and so like 20 grams for each mini skein. And so I spent a while looking through some projects to see what I could make. I didn't really want to make a shawl, or I thought about making like I think it's the Fluorite socks, the like faded longer socks by ANDREA MOWRY, I think. Yeah, and I didn't want to make or I wasn't sure about making the socks, but then I came across the Breeze Racerback, which I think the pattern picture also has like a slight gradient in the yarn, but it's only like three colors, maybe 2 or 3 colors. So I thought I could do the Breeze Racerback pattern in the mini skein set that I got. So it came, and then I cast it on pretty soon after, even though the skeins themselves looked so pretty. I really wanted to save the set to show on the podcast, but then it was taking a while for me to be able to like sit down and podcast. So I thought I'm just gonna cast it on, and then maybe I'll show parts of the skeins that are left. But then I just ended up finishing it before I could podcast. So, and also when I started knitting this, it was much warmer and we were going through a heat wave in California, and I thought this would be great to wear around the house because it's so hot, and now it's cold and I'm wearing a sweater instead. But so anyway, this is the Breeze Racerback. It has not been washed and blocked yet. But I finished it on Halloween, so it's a Halloween themed knit, especially since it's out of a colorway called Cauldron, and they're very Halloween-y colors with the purple and the green and the orange. And yeah, I kind of, I pretty much followed the pattern. I think I knit the body a little bit longer just because of the way the color transitions were happening. So I used 6 of the skeins on the body, and then 4 of the other 4 colors on the top. And I basically knit as much as I could out of the first skein. It basically took up the whole ribbing. And then after that, I did a little bit of some color transitioning between the first color and the second color. I think I just alternated a couple rows, and then when I got to the other colors, I was able to do like a little bit of a different type of transition, I guess, where I knit I guess like if we call this the first color, and then I would knit one row of the second color, and then 2 rows of the first color, 2 rows of the second color, 1 row of the first color, and then go on to the second color. And so I followed that pretty much up the whole body. And then some of the skeins were more similar in color than the other ones. So like these 2 grays here are pretty close. And then even the lighter purple here transitions pretty well, but like the light purple to the medium purple are the transition's a little more obvious. And same thing from the medium purple to this like wine colored purple. Yeah. So, but I think that's okay. And then yeah, and then when I got to the top, it was just a little bit more trying to figure out how much yarn I wanted to use. I thought I might not have enough at first for because I had to give the knit the top in sections, obviously. So I had to make sure I had enough for each section for each color. Some people had weighed out their skein into like 3 equal parts, but then I realized that because I was doing so many color transitions in the top, I'd have plenty to just do like that roughly 10 rows of the main color and then do the transitioning, a couple rows of the transitioning. So yeah, and then I just have a little bit of the orange at the top, so I have the most left of orange, but yeah, and then this fits pretty well. I think I knit the extra large size because I wanted it kind of loose, and it's supposed to be pretty loose and airy. So yeah, I need to block this and then take some pictures, and then yeah, and then wear it next season when it's warm again. So that is it for my finished objects, and that would bring us to works in progress. So first I have a project that's almost done. It is the Kick in the Pants socks by Lollipop yarns, and it's knit out of Lollipop yarns in the colorway Smile, in the traditional sock. And I have the first sock done, and then I'm knitting the second sock. I actually started the first sock with Chaigu 9-inch circular needles, US 1's 2.25 millimeters, and they were really tough to knit the because the top part I for some reason am doing a twisted rib, and so that was pretty tough to do with the small needles. And then it was just not as comfortable in my hands to use such small needles because they have very small tips because they're only 9 inches around. So eventually I switched to, I think, the ANDREA Flexi Flips just because that was what I had available. And then I think I had, when I started this sock, I switched to my signature needles, signature circular needles, because they have the really sharp, really pointed tips, and that made the twisted rib a lot easier to do. And so I've just been knitting them on the circulars now, the signature circulars, and they're coming along. I'm past the heel. I'm doing an afterthought heel on these, and yeah, so that's why the first one's already done. I did the heel before I started this one. The colors don't quite match and they're a little bit shifted, but that's, I mean, that's fine. Yeah, and as you can tell, they're very close to being done. And then, yeah, I'm kind of, when I was working on these and the other socks that I had finished, the Monkey Socks by Cookie, on these signatures, I'm debating on whether or not I favor these over the ANDREA Flexi Flips. I really liked the ANDREA flexi flips when I first tried them, and have a couple pairs now, because it feels a little bit faster. But I think on some of the soft yarns, I might like these better. And then also I think it depends on the pattern too, but because these also have a longer metal parts, there's more to hold, so they're a little bit more comfortable than the flexi flips. But I don't know, I think it also just depends on like how my hands are feeling that day. And sometimes the flexi flips are a little bit more comfortable. So anyway, that's my thoughts on sock needles, but either way, both are great. Yeah, so anyway, these are the Kick in the Pants socks that are almost done. And they're living in a chicken boots project bag, one of the small handbags with a little pocket. Next work in progress is a shawl. It is the Evenstar Shawl by Susan Pandorf, and it is I'm knitting these on signature circulars. The cord is still a little bit too long to be able to knit this in the round, so that's why it's all bunched up. Basically doing magic loop right now, and also I think I'm in the middle of a row. But yeah, this is out of Pigeon Roof Studios Rustic Silk Lace. I think this yarn is discontinued. I want to say I bought it when it was being discontinued, so yeah. Anyway, so they're on US 3s, 3.25mm needles, and I'm just following the pattern, and it's a lot to knit lace. So I haven't made that much progress on it because it does require a little bit of focus, but yeah, but I think it's going to be really pretty once it's done. Yeah, so we'll see how this goes. Hopefully I finish it within a year or so. But anyway, that's the Evenstar. And then speaking of lace, a much simpler lace project is the Hemlock ring blanket. I think, did I start this? I'm not sure if I showed this last. I think I started this since the last podcast. So this is the Hemlock ring blanket by Jared Flood. And if you've been knitting for a while and follow like blogs and Ravelry and stuff, the Hemlock ring blanket was really big. I remember, at least for me, it was one of the earlier like bulky lace projects. So Jared Flood had like backwards engineered a doily into the lace pattern and then adapted it to basically a blanket, and knit it out of a bulky yarn. So anyway, that's what I'm doing with it also. It's out of the same yarn as the pattern calls for, which is Cascade Yarns Eco Wool. I had a ton of this yarn left over from a sweater that I knit my dad. Initially I was knitting a super bulky sweater. This was when I was a very early knitter. A really bulky sweater where I held the Cascade Eco Wool together, so holding two strands together, and knit this ribbed sweater. It was way too thick, and it didn't, I think I was gonna end up not having enough yarn for that sweater, and then I scrapped that and made a different sweater pattern instead, and had so much yarn left over, enough to make a blanket. So so yeah, that's what I'm doing out of the yarn. I think the colorway is called Mocha, and yeah, it's I'm on the main feather and fan part of the project, of the pattern, so it's pretty simple now, and even the beginning, it wasn't too bad for a I think if you're like relatively new to knitting lace, it's a pretty easy pattern to follow. So yeah, so that's my blanket. I'm not sure. This might be a gift. We'll see how it turns out. So anyway, yeah, that's the Hemlock ring. And last but not least, a new work in progress since the last time we talked. I casted on a pair of Christmas socks, and this will segue into pretty things in a minute. So this is the beginning of some Christmas socks. It's out of Stranded Dye Works Merino Nylon, and Zooming Home for Christmas is the main color, and then Christmas Green is going to be the contrasting toes and heels. It's out of, I just said what it's out of. I'm knitting it on US 1's 2.25mm needles, the Addy Flexi Flips, and they're toe up. Obviously, this is the toe. Toe socks. I'm going to do a Fish Lips Kiss heel, and I cast on using Judy's Magic Cast On. And then I normally knit my toes starting with 16 stitches on each needle to make 32 around, but I wanted the toes a little bit longer, so I noticed that when I do contrasting toes, when I put the sock on, there's not as much color showing. It just like widens it out and it's a little bit smaller than I would like. So for these, I started with 12 stitches on each needle, so 24 stitches around, and that way I would have a little bit of a longer toe once I increased up to 64 stitches around. Yeah, so that's the Christmas sock, and this is living in my Bags by Awesome Granny Christmas guinea pig project bag. And yeah, and so this is one of the, I guess we can segue into pretty things right now. So I did make an order from Stranded Dye Works and picked up the Christmas yarn. This is the Zooming Home for Christmas colorway, and it came with the Christmas Green mini skein for the contrasting heels and toes. And then for more pretty things, I also picked up another Christmas sock set, and this is the Gingerbread House Merino Nylon in the main color, and then the contrasting color is Christmas Red. And this is just more Merino Nylon. And then I also picked up Merino DK, and this colorway is Kingfisher Blue, and it's this really pretty like rich greenish blue, bluish green. Yeah, and I was thinking about, so my next sweater project, I was thinking about making a Tecumseh, and I'm not sure what I am going to use for the contrasting colors yet for the color work pattern, but this might be an option. I don't remember if one skein is enough, but I think it might be. We'll see. But yeah, I really want to knit a Tecumseh. I want to knit a top-down sweater because I don't think I have knit a top-down sweater yet, because this is my first actual pullover, and then the other sweaters that I've knit have been cardigans. Yeah, so next step is a top-down sweater. Yeah, okay, so that's all I have for pretty things, and next would be local delights. So we're still sheltering in place, kind of, in the Bay Area in California. I think our county is in like the orange tier. Yeah, that sounds right. So California made different tiers for reopening and guidelines, and so we're still kind of in the middle-ish tier, where some things are open, but a lot of stuff is at lower capacity, and things that are not as safe or like not open or are very low capacity. Anyway, all that being said, so we're still, you know, trying to kind of support our local businesses and local restaurants. So we have our extended bubble are some of our friends that live about 20 minutes from here in Alameda. So on occasion we'll go to Alameda and sometimes they'll come up here. But last time, or not the last time, but recently we went to Alameda and picked up some coffee and tea from Coffee and Tea Traders in Alameda. It's on Bay Farm if you're familiar with the Alameda Island and Bay Farm, that area. Yeah, so it's really funny because Alameda Island has all of the restaurants and shops and everything, and Bay Farm is mostly residential with like one very small commercial area. So next to the Safeway that's there is the coffee shop called Coffee and Tea Traders. I think they've recently had new ownership, or within maybe the past couple of years, but we have been there for the first time this year, and they have really good drinks. Like they have a Vietnamese coffee that is very good. They have matcha that is good. They are also one of the not distributors, but like they carry Third Culture muffins and donuts. Actually it might just be muffins, but they carry the mochi muffins from Third Culture. And what brought us there was they have a ube, a matcha drink, and an ube Vietnamese coffee drink. And ube, if you're not familiar with it, it's like a Filipino purple yam that a lot of times is eaten sweet in sweet things. It's in halo halo, and or you can just have it as like a dessert, almost like a, it's not really a custard, but like a kind of like a pudding type thing. Anyway, so they had some drinks that have like an ube kind of syrup mix in puree, that's what it is. So they have these drinks that have like ube puree in it, and they're so good because it's ube and like coconut milk, I think, or ube coconut and then condensed milk, something like that, mixed in with well, the Vietnamese coffee definitely has condensed milk. So yeah, and then you can mix it all together, and either with the coffee or with the matcha, and it's very good. So that's what brought us there, and now I'm craving it every weekend. But yeah, that's for local delights. If you're ever in the Alameda area, especially if you're on Bay Farm and you're looking for a place to pick up some coffee, Vietnamese coffee is also very strong. So if you need something to jumpstart your day, that's a good choice is the Coffee and Tea Traders down there. So yeah, that's local delights. That's all I have for you today. Social media stuff, I'm Elion and it's on Ravelry. I'm Perfect529 on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, and anywhere else. You can find show notes at knitsandstuffpodcast.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can find them in the description box below. And yeah, I guess it's the holiday season now, so who knows when the next episode will be, but thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you, and if I don't podcast before, hope you have a good holiday season. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I will see you hopefully in a month or two. Yeah, okay, thanks.